All right, my friends. This week's Chumash, Vayigash, with the different commentaries I took from last year's class, and I uploaded it. So you can look in the YouTube and see the commentaries that we learned last year. And now, because we have this free space, so let's learn a speech that was given by the Lubavitcher Rebbe. What was it? I'll tell you in just one moment. Which was given by the Lubavitcher Rebbe in 1960. Huh? Chaf Aleph. It was like, no, it's 1960. And as you know, the general theme of all this is to bring Moshiach. And that the another part of that theme, a sub-theme, is that bringing Moshiach depends on us to make it happen faster. And we have a workbook, and that's the Torah. The only problem is coming Mashiach is not just going to be some historical event like Moses did. That Moses just sort of forced the Jews to leave Egypt. And they basically didn't even know what they were doing, the Jews, when they left Egypt. They just left. Didn't have much choice. Paro, it says, evicted them. All of a sudden, they found themselves in this desert. They couldn't go back. They were surrounded by these clouds that protected them from the snow, scorpions, unless if they left the cloud, they were in trouble. So the Jews left Egypt more or less not through their own volition. And we see the repercussions from that after 40 days after they received the Torah, they participated either actively or passively in the worshiping of the golden calf. So Moshiach is going to be something like Moses because he's going to do these big miracles. And that's the first of the 10 Commandments. It's the basis of Judaism. God does big miracles, but it won't be like Moses because then the Jewish people, they couldn't really do that much to speed up the process. But we can and must, because Mashiach is going to be a person that's going to change us as well as the political surrounding. There won't be any more paros over us or under us or within us. But even more so, it'll give us a new will, a new desire. A new, if you want to call it, identity. That everyone in the world will really want to serve the creator of the universe. Everyone will want to serve the creator of the universe, not to go to heaven, not for selfish purpose, just to do what's true. Huh? Just to do what's true, just like everybody wants to breathe and that's automatic. Everybody wants a house. Everybody wants to be, how do you say, social being, to be among friends. There's certain needs and desires which are in a person. The prime desire which is in man is desire for meaning, for truth. That's the prime desire. And now we're in exile, which means that our prime desires are not recognized or expressed or acknowledged. People want truth. Who wants the truth now? So that's the whole idea of the future redemption. And the way to bring this future redemption is that we have to do things. What do we have to do? Well, here in Chassidut, it explains a little bit about what we have to do, but mostly how we have to do, what our attitude should be to change the whole world. Ready? Here we go. And we can learn this from what is written in the Bible. And it says in the Bible is written that the Jews got out of Egypt. How did they get into Egypt? Because of Yosef. Yosef Atzadik saved the whole world. If it wasn't for him, there wouldn't be any Jews to go into Egypt. There was a big famine. And Yosef, who had been previously a prisoner, but he was taken out because of his ability to translate dreams And Paro had this dream that he felt was something very important, but he couldn't figure out what it was. So they took Yosef out of the prison to translate dreams. And he said, Paro, listen to what I'm going to say. There's going to be a big famine. Farmer said, you sure got a big famine? I mean, everything is really good. Got a lot of food and everything like that. I feel comfortable. So you had a dream? Yeah. Dream worries you? Yeah. Well, forget about the plenty. We're going to have 7 years of plenty. It's going to be good. But after that, there's going to be a big famine. And that's what your dream is telling you. Prepare for the famine. And so he did. He prepared for the famine. And sure enough, Egypt was the only place in the world where there was food. And Yosef's brothers came down. And that's what we're talking about in this week's Torah portion. Yosef's brothers came down to Egypt. And after a short interlude over there where Yosef sort of toys with them and drives them crazy, but Yosef identifies himself and says, here I am Yosef, your brother. And they're very happy, and all the Jews go down to Egypt. And then we'll see in a couple of weeks, the beginning of the book of Exodus, that Yosef dies and all of his brothers. And then the exile sets in. And after the exile is the going out of Egypt, and they receive the Torah. So that's the whole story here. Let's go. B'shas Yosef HaTzadik, when Yosef hat sich gelost dar kennen zu seinem Bruder, when Yosef, he stopped concealing himself to his brothers, he said to his brothers like this, right? So his brothers are standing there, and Yosef has made this whole trick that he's pretending he's going to take Benjamin, the youngest brother, and put him into prison forever. And all the brothers are going berserk over the yelling, crying, and screaming. So Yosef says, want to know who I am? They said, what are you talking about? He said, I'll give you a hint. It's Yosef. They said, what? Yosef? Oh, no. Now he's going to kill us for sure. Right? We're sorry what we did. And he starts crying, and they start crying. And they said, well, we're so sorry. We're so happy that you're still alive. And Yosef, but we're so sorry. And all these thousands of emotions start flooding into the brothers because they sold him into captivity. They thought they killed him. And now he's saving their lives. And he's really... Anyway, so everything is jumping around by them. Their souls are bouncing around inside of their body, their personalities. Should they be afraid? Should they be grateful? Should they be thankful? Should they be regretful? Regret what they did? Anyway, so finally he says, okay, fellas, calm down. You think you put me into prison? No way. God sent me down here. God sent me down there. Good, you had bad intentions, true, but I'm not going to hold that against you. The fact of the matter is everything came out the best possible way. It couldn't have come out better. God sent me down here, l'sum lechem she'iris ba'oretz, to make for you a savior, a safe place, and keep you alive until the Pleta Gadola, until a big escape. V'ata, this is still Yosef speaking to his brothers. Lo atem shalachtem otzihina. You fellas, you didn't send me here. Ki im Elokim, but God. Yesimeni, and he made me like a king over Paro, or Moshiach b'kol Eretz Yisrael, and I am now a king. I rule the whole land of Egypt. As not the brother, not the brothers, nor the Eberster, but God had Yosef far ois geschicht, sent him kein Mitzrayim into Egypt. Now, a normal person, I mean, let's think about this one for a second. Let's say you have brothers, and they all hate you, and they throw you into a pit full of scorpions and snakes. When they see the scorpions and snakes don't bite you, so they take you out and they sell you into captivity, into people that they know that it's like a one-way trip. You go, you don't come back. And that's it. And so Yosef has been basically abandoned totally in some weird, who knows how, how the what do you want to call it, deformed Egyptian prison. And he's sitting over there for 12 years. And before that, he was also by Potiphar. Anyway, these terrible things happened to him. and he's on the verge of death, like constantly over there, and he has no friends whatsoever. And all of a sudden, one day, the whole thing just flips around, and he gets taken out to interpret this dream of Paro, and he becomes like the leader of the whole country. Good. Now come your brothers, the ones who sent you into prison. So what do you do to them? What would you do to them? So it says Yosef, he played around with them a little bit, but he wasn't angry, and he wasn't vindictive, and he didn't, start telling them off, you miserable, vermin, you wanted to kill me. Well, it didn't work. Turned around on your face. So now eat what you've given. I'm throwing you in prison for 10 years. I'd do something like that. Any sort of normal person, I think, would do a thing like that. Not Yosef. Yosef said, listen, guys, you're my brothers. And the reason that came into this crazy idea into your heads is because this is what God wanted. And you were just emissaries of God. And true, I suffered. But now, if I wouldn't have suffered, then the whole world would be dead. So he looked at the whole thing in a good way, right? But interestingly enough, what does he tell them? He says that I am now over here. This is translation in Yiddish. He says, what? I'm saving you, the plate of Gedola. There's going to be a big escape one day. Nor der Eberster, God sent Yosef, he sent me here. Hat ihm dort gemacht for a Moshel, God made him for a king, zu lieb von as Yaakov und sein Kinder, for Yaakov and his children, sollen durch him, by means of him, können gespeist, could be saved, wären, und ganz bleiben and remaining whole, in their Zeit from hunger year, in the time of the years of hunger. Und bald noch dann, and after that, hat sie angesagt, afterwards he said to them like this, Sameni Elokim Ladom. This is what Yosef said. God made me a king. That what I said, plate the Gadol. I mean to save you from the famine. Famine. That's one way of interpreting it. Okay, but afterwards, Yosef says, God made me a master for all of Egypt. The Eibishter hat mir gemacht for a whore, for a master of the ganze Mitzrayim, of all of Egypt. And therefore, Redei alai al tamod. Therefore, he said, come down to me, don't delay. As Yaakov and sein Mishpacha, as his family, should not upkalten, should not delay at all, nor about the Rav Nidrin, but immediately come down to Egypt. This is telling to his brothers, right? Yeah, his father, Yaakov, is still back in, he didn't come with them. He's still back in Israel, the land of Canaan. And he's waiting for all his sons to go back. Right? He thinks that Yosef is dead, and he doesn't know what's going to be with the rest. He sent them. Yosef took Shimon into captivity, so until the brothers came back and showed him Benjamin. So he did. So now Yosef says, "Okay, now go back to Canaan. Bring your father here. Don't delay." From this is verstanden, it's understood as the Yerida, that the descent of Yaakov, Ubanov, in Kolos Mitzrayim is given upgehängt. That depends on the fact is this was Yosef is given a Moshel when Adon oif Gans Mitzrayim, right? God wanted there to be the Jews in exile, but it didn't begin until Yaakov went down to Egypt, and Yaakov could not have gone down to Egypt until Yosef was there ruling over Egypt. Thus, this means as Yosef had nit blois erzählt. He didn't just say, Vidi Hashkacha Pratis, how it was that God in his divine individual direction of everything. That's what's called Hashkacha Pratis, that God observes and is involved in every little detail and every interaction in the whole world. Hashkacha Pratit. Hat gefiert as Mechirat Yosef, that the selling of Yosef, Hat Zayin Asiba, has a reason to Zayin Kuman, to coming to Egypt. Nor Hat Zay Oich Maram is given. He also hinted, as Durach Dem, by means of this, by God had sent him there for Gewaltiker, as a ruler, from Egypt is can shine. Now there can be Redei, you can come down. What does it mean, Redei? So it says at as Ken Shoin Durchfir, and there can already begin the Kavana from Galus Mitzrayim, not just the exile from Egypt, but the intention from the exile in Egypt. Okay, this is a very interesting thing because what's happening here is Yosef is trying to tell them that the fact that they're going to be, the Jewish people are going to be in Egypt, this is not some sort of just an accident, just happened to be that way, right? They just missed the bus or something like that, and because of that, so they got left in a bad neighborhood over 210 years. That's not what happened. The Jewish people intentionally, God wanted them to come into Egypt, and there was a purpose why to come into Egypt. What was the purpose to come into Egypt? We'll find out in a minute. But the main purpose was they would all be slaves in Egypt, and they would come out, and they would receive the Torah. Well, you can ask a question: what do they have to be in slaves in Egypt for? Let them just, stay in the land of Israel, grow up a lot of, right? And then God says to them, okay, everyone, hello, time to receive the Torah. Let's go, let's get that Torah. And everybody just go and get the Torah. What do they have to suffer in Egypt for 210 years in order to receive the Torah for? What's it got to do with? Not only that, it says that when they were in Egypt, so they got familiar with these different idols, because the Egyptians were big idolaters. So they got familiar with all these idols. So when they went out, they were susceptible to fall back into that pitfall, idolatry. We'll talk about this later, undoubtedly, but it seems that idolatry back then was a much bigger, a desire, a lust of a fulfilling than anything now. I guess maybe the closest thing you have to idolatry now is Christianity. I guess to a certain degree, maybe what's it called? Hinduism, to a certain degree. I don't know. I was in Thailand. They have these also big places with these big statues of Buddha over there. So maybe that's also, I guess that's also idolatry. But the Egyptians were big idolaters. And the Jews are human beings, right? And so it seems there was a tremendous pleasure and very fulfilling, right, for people to worship idols. It still is, but not to the degree it was back then. It says now it's like 1/600th or something like that of the pleasure that people used to have. That's why in the first temple the Jews worshipped golden idol. Why they worshipped the golden calf? Because it was such a tremendous pleasure, and comfort. Okay. In any case, the Jews were in Egypt. They went down to Egypt. The purpose was to be in Egypt was something in addition to receiving the Torah. What? We'll see. They were clear, therefore, it means like this in Pashtus. When God had in them when he said to Abraham in the covenant between the pieces, Galust Vazen to Avram Avinu, when he said, Abraham, as seine Kinder, that your children, then kommen in Galus, are going to go to Egypt. Was is zugekommen, where hat im zugesagt. So he said, so God said to Abraham, God said to Abraham, this was like what, and less than 100 years before, right? Yeah. Before the Jews went down into Egypt. So there was the covenant between the pieces, it says. And God said to Abraham, you are going to be strangers in a strange land. Okay, and afterwards, you're going to go out with a big treasure. That's what God said. Why are you going to be in Egypt? Why are you going to be slaves in Egypt for 210 years and suffer over there and get killed and everything? Why? Because you're going to go out with a lot of money. Azay from Galus, they're going to go out with the greatest reichtum, with the tremendous riches. The meaning is, them haftacha night blows not only far gitikung from the Yisurim. This is not just a paying off. Hey, how do you say a reward for all of the the pain and the torture that the Jews suffered for the 210 years, like it says, of Adum v'inu osam, that the Egyptians are going to, how do you say, make the Jewish people suffer over there, beat them and everything, nor nachmon even more. So Rois Kahan, they're going out, Rechush Gadol, with a lot of riches, is the tachlis, that was the purpose. That was the whole purpose of them going into Egypt. Does that make any sense? Totally not. We're going to see. It's even more nonsensical than you think. Just one second. So God promises Abraham, you're going to be the father of a big nation. And they're going to go down into a strange land. And they're going to be slaves there for 210 years. But don't worry about it. They're going to go out with a lot of money. The Rebbe is going to ask a question in a second. Who would want a thing like that for their children? Right? Yeah, we're going to take your children. We're going to torture them. But don't worry. Each one's going to give $1 million. Right? We're going to torture them. A few of them we'll kill them. You know, they'll be enslaved and they'll suffer. And but the ones that get out, they get a lot of money. Who wants to think like that? Who would say, do me a favor, don't torture me and don't give me any money? We'll see. Nevertheless, this is the purpose, that they're going to go out with the money. And the money is not just a reparations for the suffering that they suffered. Getting the money was a goal. All right, what's the proof of that? I know from the time, one of the reasons from the plague of darkness was the Eibishter which God brought, or the Mitzrayim that he brought on the Egyptians, right? That's the ninth plague of the Egyptians is bichdei, in order the Yidden, that the Jews, Zolan, in them sight, in the time when it was all dark, that they could go into the houses of the Egyptians, and they could take out all the valuable vessels which the Egyptians had. By means of this, the Jews could fulfill what it says, "Vayishalu ish meit re'ehu, v'isha meit ruta kli kesef v'kli zahav." They would go into the houses and see all where everything was hidden. And then when it came time for the Jews to go out of Egypt, so they go to the next door neighbors and say, "Give me all your riches." And they say, "Oh man, we don't have any riches." He says, "Yeah, well, what about behind that false picture that's on the wall? And what about in the cushions on your bed? What about this? How did you know that?" So when it was dark, it was the plague of darkness. It was only dark for you, but for us, we could see. We went in and saw every penny that you've got in the house. Let's have it. Give everything you've got. And the Egyptians would say, "Listen, these people are just destroying our whole country with all these plagues. There's already been 9 plagues, this terrible plague." They gave him everything. Borgen, them Reichtum from the Mitzrayim. How did where they would see where it was hidden, the riches of the Egyptians, so they can say that, and afterwards you will go out with tremendous riches. So we see that this idea of going out with riches was a very, very essential thing in Egypt, which of course is totally nonsensical. I mean, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. First of all, it says that when the Jews left Egypt and when they crossed the sea, so it says that the Egyptian soldiers, they were so certain that they were going to catch up to them, the Jews, and kill them. So, and they were going to have a big party afterwards. So they all got dressed up. All the Egyptians, they put on all their gold and their silver, whatever was left. They put on all their gold. I made a mistake. Okay. They put on all their gold and their silver garments and dressed up their horses and everything like that. Shalo Yomar, so that it shouldn't be said, Oto Tzadik, that tzaddik, Abraham, will not say, as Avram Avinu Zol, that Avram should not say, as Eibishter, that God, he fulfilled what it says, Vivdum Vinu Osam, that God fulfilled really good what it said, that the Jews are going to be slaves and they are going to be servants and they're going to be punished, they're going to suffer. That part of it, God fulfilled. But the other part where they're going to go out with big riches, so in order to do that, God made it that in the plague of darkness, the Jewish people could see, so that when they left Egypt, that they would be able to fulfill the promise, the second half of the promise, to go out of Egypt with money. Says the Rebbe, this is the question I just told you, Lechiora is nicht verstanden, it's totally not understood. If a person is found in exile, and especially in such a difficult and bitter Galus, exile, as it was by the Jews in Egypt. Vetach a mensch, zicher mevatar, a person would certainly be willing to forego, or if them the revach on any sort of profit or money, avi bal just let me out of here, right? If you say to a person, okay, next week we're going to let you out of this torture chamber and we're going to give you $1,000,000, or if you want to, we'll let you out right now and you don't get anything. He says, let me out, man. I want to get out, right? Sitting in the dentist chair without any anesthetic, right? For one more week and you're going to get another. Do me a favor, just stop the punishment. Forget about the money. Keep the money for yourself. Do whatever you want to. Let me out. Wie the Gemara Zach, like the Gemara says, as Yidden haben Taka Getaina, the Jews said, when God said, Vayishalu, go and ask from your next door neighbors. When God said, Jews, get out of Egypt, leave, and ask for your next door neighbors vessels of gold and silver. The Jews said, you want us to take out silver and gold. We're going to go. God said, don't worry, you're going to go out with silver and gold. The Jews said, listen, we want to get out just ourselves. I care about gold and silver. That we should go out ourselves from Egypt. When the Gemara even brings a mushal. Says from a mensch, a person, but says eingespart in Beta Asurim, that he's imprisoned in a prison. On mention Zogan, people say to him, Mivet dir Morgan, Bafrian, we'll let you out in the morning and we'll give you a lot of money. As the person would say, listen, ich bet, I just asking you one thing. Nehmt mir heint reis, let me out tonight. Und ich bet by ich mir gorn, that's all I want. To remain in a torture chamber for another few hours in order to get $1,000,000, just get me out of here. I don't care about the money or anything. I just want to get out myself. If so, how can it be that God says to the Jews, you're going to suffer for 210 years, but you're going to get out with a lot of money? In order to come out with money? That makes no sense. Un oich, their Tam from Gemara that says, Shalo yomer oto tzaddik. The Gemara says the reason that God gave them the money is so that Abraham wouldn't come with a complaint to God. Hey, God, you made them suffer, right? You said they're going to suffer and they're going to go out with a lot of money. Suffering, you did really good, but money you didn't give them. Says, therefore, God gave them all the money. Says the Rebbe, that's also not understandable. For sure, Avram Avinu certainly would have been willing to forego any sort of money. Avi seine Kinder, but just the main thing is children should get out of exile. What do you care about? The Rebbe Muslim Zogan, so therefore we have to say, as that if it wasn't for the money that the Jews took out of Egypt from Mitzrayim, wollten sich nit ausgeführt the kavana, they wouldn't. It must be that they were missing some sort of a deep intention over here. They didn't just come out with money. The purpose wasn't money. There must have been something in that money. From Tachlis Zerakonim, the whole reason they were in exile. Well, the kavana, because the exile is going out with a lot of riches in order to fulfill this. And there was taking out the money somehow or other was a goal in itself. That was a goal in itself. Not would make them richer or would make them. What was in that money? What's going on? What was the money of Egypt? What's so important? Says the Rebbe, the Rebbe said it was so important, it was worthwhile for them to go down for 210 years just to go out with this money. Why? Because in order to fulfill the intention of going out of Egypt, Yosef, first of all, had to be a ruler over the whole land of Israel, over the whole land of Egypt. Was durch them, through this, it says he had the opportunity, the meglechheit, the opportunity, ein zu sammeln, to gather together, unter seine Hand, under his hand, to richtum all the riches from the land, from the land. But Yosef is kol hakesef. Yosef gathered together all the money. Kol hakesef zavom. He gathered together all the money in the world. It says that everyone in the world came to Egypt because there was no food anywhere. When es soll später gekent sich ausführen, then he could give all this money to the Jews. What was the point of this? Let's just learn a couple more lines and we'll see. The Yerida, Kain Mitzrayim, the whole purpose, the Jews went into Egypt, is given, it was in order to refine, umala, and to elevate in kedusha the nitzutzos, the sparks of holiness which were in Egypt. We talked about this a little bit before, this idea of the sparks. But this is a Kabbalistic idea that says in the beginning, when God created the world, is that there was a whole, and one of the stages in creation was what's called breaking of the vessels. Because God creating the world, he didn't just create the world that there should be spiritual worlds and physical worlds. He created the world in order that man should serve him, that man should change the world. And in order to do this, man has to have all sorts of difficulties, temptations, obstacles. It's a hard job. What made it hard was this thing called the breaking of the vessels. It was a stage in the creation. And basically what happened is that all the meaning in the world, everything in the world is being created by God, and everything has a meaning, and that this meaning would be confused. It would be confused and hidden. And generally speaking, this meaning is a certain pleasure. We've talked about this before. It's a certain type of a pleasure, but it's not it's like the pleasure a person gets from being honest, a pleasure the person gets from seeing his children get married, a pleasure that a person gets from bravery, from doing the right thing. Sometimes in order to do that, you have to defy the whole world. That feeling of pleasure, or that using of things in the world for what God wants us to use them for, that's even a deeper type of pleasure. God, that, so to speak, raises the sparks. We've talked about this before a lot. It's like getting a puzzle that you see on the box of the puzzle, 100,000 piece puzzle. I mean, you see there's a beautiful picture of the world, whatever, with all the great detail, and everybody's houses and everything. 100,000 pieces of puzzle. You open up the puzzle, and there's 1,000,000 pieces, 2,000,000 pieces. You look at the instructions that say 100,000 pieces are relevant to this puzzle. All the rest are extraneous. You have to figure out which ones are extraneous, which ones are not. Have a good day. All of a sudden, now you have to get that's what the whole world is. The whole world, you have to try to put the thing together so it makes sense. That's what's called raising up the sparks. The whole world is dismembered like this puzzle. And there's a lot of pieces which are extraneous. You have to get rid of them, put them aside, and then all of a sudden the whole thing becomes, that's called raising up the vessels. These vessels, these raising, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Raising up the sparks from the breaking of the vessels. It says the vessels broke and the sparks fell down. We'll talk about what the vessels are, what the sparks are, what's the toe. Nevertheless, the world as it is very confused. And Jews have to put everything in their proper place. And one way they do it is by going through difficulties and tests and still holding on to their belief in God. That's one of the ways of doing it. And that's what happened. When the Jews went down to Egypt, they suffered. And the whole purpose was supposed to be that while they were in Egypt, they did not lose their identity. They did not lose their hope that they would get out and that they could be Jews and that they could do what God wants. Meanwhile, the staying in Egypt and suffering in Egypt and simultaneously believing in God, as that raised up a lot of sparks. And the sparks were in the form of the money that they took out. And that's why it was so important that they took out the money of Egypt to raise up these sparks of meaning, as we're going to talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. Have a good day with Moshiach now. Thank you for tuning in, and see you at 8:15. Shalom Uvracha.